thought we could kick things off, just if everyone can introduce themselves, tell us about the book you're pimping, and also if you could add something weird about yourselves. What makes you weird? Past, present, future, it's all friends. You guys can get pretty darn weird, I think. What makes you unique? Just add some little spice in there. Don't everyone go for the mic at once.
Are you going to go in order?
No, I want it to be a free-for-all. Rachel, it's you. Rachel, you just got yourself the first spot.
Which one?
Yay!
There are two Rachels here, so I'm still covered. Hi, I'm Rachel Caine, and I write a lot of things. I think I'm up to 47 novels now. Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Get a job, Rachel.
I had one. I'm probably best known for the Morganville Vampire series in young adult, and my new book, because this is what we're supposed to do, is Ink and Bone. It's a novel in which the Great Library of Alexandria didn't burn. So I'm very excited about it. It's available actually as of this week. And something weird about me, I had a secret life as a corporate executive for many years, and that's absolutely true. That's the weirdest thing of all.
I'm a little disturbed by that, actually.
I know,
I'm not
it's
sure how to
terrifying.
recover. I can go next as the other Rachel, Rachel 2, the revenge of Rachel. I'm Rachel Hartman, and this is my second book, speaking of two, is Shadow Scale, the sequel to my first book. Interestingly enough, I decided to go with first book and second book instead of writing my 8th book first. Could have gone any direction, though. The first book is called Seraphina. It's about a world where dragons can take human form and all the trouble that causes. And the weird thing about me is that I'm not actually a dragon in human form. No, I'm kidding. I am. I mean, no, wait. Now I'm confused. The weirdest thing about me is I love to sing, and it's sort of chronic. And one of my favorite, most relaxing activities is to sing while I'm riding my bike. And I think I'm maybe known in my neighborhood as the singing biking lady, because that's what I kind of do. And recently, I've taught myself overtone singing, which is like tube and throat singing. And so if you're all very, very naughty, I might inflict that on you later, so be good.
No, we should be bad.
I'm Jenny Martin, and I grew up loving Han Solo, and I never saw myself in the stories like I wanted to be a Han Solo girl. So I wrote, just Tracked is about a Han Solo type rogue who street races on another planet in the future and takes down the Empire and rescues the prince. So that's what that's about. And what's weird about me, I love pancakes like I love pancakes.
Okay, you and I.
She does. She really does.
I love them like 3 times a week or more. And then I have a deathly fear of potlucks. I don't know if you underbake that quiche. I don't know if your mayonnaise and your potato salad was fresh. Do I know you? Do I trust you? Potluck's scary.
Me or you?
Fight it out,
Want me to
fight
go?
it out.
I'm Rachel.
Hi, I'm Tom Sniegoski, and I was lost, which is why I was not here on time. What I'm pimping is The Raven's Child, which I think is probably like my 40th book. So I'm catching up, Rachel.
Yay.
Right behind you.
I'm running fast.
It's a story about a world overrun by monsters and the 16-year-old girl who must basically become a monster in order to defeat them. And it's beautiful. It's by an artist named Tom Brown, British artist. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous book. Get a chance, come up and look at it. And the weird thing about me, my accent, and I have really strange dogs. I get each dog has its own very unique personality. And my previous dog was a yellow lab named Mulder, who was like Buddha, like just an absolutely beautiful, calm, loving dog. And then I got a French bulldog named Kirby, and Kirby's like the Antichrist. So I went from Forrest Gump to the Antichrist. So.
Okay, I'll go next. My name is Colleen Houck, and most people know me from my previous series, which is the Tiger's Curse series. And then this is my brand new series that this one's kicking off. This book actually isn't out yet, although we're giving away 50 free copies at the signing after this, so come and find me. I say this is kind of like a Twilight meets the Mummy, so, but the mummies are the hot guys, which is kind of weird. And the weird thing about me is this is my second career as a writer. My first career was a sign language interpreter, so I'm fluent in sign language. And my husband and I were dating for 6 months before he figured out we were dating. So there you go.
All right. My name is Kim Liggett, and this is my debut. Is coming out September 22nd with Penguin, and it is called Blood and Salt. And thanks, my friend Rebecca. And it is Romeo and Juliet meets Children of the Corn. So it's not weird at all. I don't even know what I'm doing here. But they call it romantic horror. I prefer horrormance. I think that's a much better. No one that really isn't catching on, but I don't know why. I think it's really, really suitable. Something weird about myself. It's not really weird because it was my life, but I was a backup singer for a lot of years in the 80s. I had like 80s bangs that like could take someone's eye out. It was serious. I had a condition, and I worked with Duran Duran, the Eurythmics, and thank you. You remember this is my age group, and Robert Palmer did a lot of this. You guys recognize me? It's been 30 years. I want to see all you guys in 30 years. Let's bring pictures and yeah, let's compare. So what I thought we'd do is we'd start off just talking about what is weird. Why is pretty weird? It can get pretty darn weird, obviously, from what's up here. But I mean, Comic-Con was once considered completely bizarre and on the fringe, and now this is this multi-billion-dollar business. And how do we keep YA weird when the goalposts are constantly shifting? So when you're writing, are you consciously like trying to infuse your weird, or are you just letting your weirdness flow? Please.
We have no organization here.
We're going Tom. We're going down the line.
I think what it is, I mean, in my case, I've been weird my entire life. I was always the weird little kid.
Yeah.
I was the one killing the bugs in the yard with the magnifying glass and off by himself making toys that shouldn't have been, taking pieces off and reattaching other toy pieces. So I think it just carried over from childhood. So my brain has always been there. My mother used to say, "I'll buy you that Matchbox car if you stop being weird."
Oh, man.
And I say, all right, I'm not going to be weird anymore. I'd get the Matchbox car and a dinosaur would be eating it 20 minutes later. So, but yeah, I think I've always been that way, and I think the sensibility has just stayed with me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't imagine really doing anything else. Almost everything that I write has that touch of the bizarre. I'm currently developing a straight, like, hard-boiled mystery novel, but I find the weird creeping into it.
Yeah.
So it might be in there, it might not, I don't know, but it's hard to let it go.
Yeah.
It's a condition.
It is.
I tried not being weird. And I actually wrote 3 books that were not supposed to be in any way supernatural or paranormal. One of them had a reincarnated dog. One of them had spontaneous human combustion from dry cleaning chemicals.
Oh my God.
It was awesome. And hookers. And one of them was about a terrorist attack on the border, but somehow it also included the ghost of a child that died in the desert. So I fail at not being weird, and I've just embraced it now because, by the way, none of those books that I mentioned actually sold anything because they were like, what is this? So I've come back to my weird side. I like it here.
I'd say for me, I love mythology, so all my books that I've written so far have mythology in it, and I'm very liberal with mix and matching mythology. If I find a story from Greek that I like, and then I mix in, the Norse mythology, and then, hey, let's put in some Native American in there. And my agent said, you kind of are all over the place, aren't you? But it kind of works for you. So I think that's kind of my weird thing. Basically, I try to incorporate everything I love into my books. And so, hey, I like giant worms. I'm going to throw a giant worm in there somewhere. Or, maybe I have a, giant scorpion. I figure out a way to put it in there is what I do. So I just basically, anything that comes to my mind, I've got a giant notepad full of ideas, and if I can't use it in this chapter, I bump it down to the next one. If it doesn't work that book, I'll put it to the next book. So that's kind of how I roll.
So it's like Mad Libs.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
So quick, everybody give her 2 things to put in the next book.
I know, really.
Peanut butter? No.
And a giant scorpion.
No, I already have peanut butter. You can't have that one.
Oh man, I was the weird kid too, but it always took me by surprise. Like I didn't understand what people were thinking I was weird. In 7th grade, for example, I had a book that had a recipe for worm cookies in it, and an actual recipe. And it turns out it's complicated. Cooking worms is complicated. They're full of dirt, right? So you got to scrape them with a spoon, you got to parboil them, and then you got to boil them again. And so I made these worm cookies, and I was so excited, and I took them to school, and suddenly I didn't have any friends, and I was like, wait, why? I don't get it. So for me, being weird has never been something I've tried to do. It's just sort of a matter of being honest, and so I think that is something all literature needs is honesty, and if the honesty happens to comes from your deepest inner self is just kind of out there, well, too bad, and that weird is also very contextual, right? That we're all here letting our freak flag fly. The lady I flew into San Diego with, who was next to me on the plane, she was talking to me about her terrible family. Now they were weird, and she should have been talking to her therapist, not me. I was listening to this and I was like, wow, this family. And then finally she started grumping that she couldn't get a hotel room downtown because of all those weirdos. And I was like, here's the pot and here's the kettle. Now we're all right. So it just depends which angle you're coming from. So for me, I always feel completely normal all the time, but it's because I'm in my own head and I see this stuff all the time. So I think just be honest, and if you happen to be weird to other people, great, go for it.
First of all, I think you get the catchphrase of the panel, parboiled worms. I mean, I don't think you can do better than that.
Oh, worm cookies.
Yeah.
I kind of think that weird is a two-sided lens. And I think with one side, you can hurt people, almost like you're the magnifying glass with the bug. You're labeling people or calling them weird or making them feel small or strange or in the margins, and that's a bad kind of using weird. But on the flip side, the wonderful lens of weird, that realizing that everything that we do every day, there's so much absurdity, there's so much weird, random chaos, strange, scary, ridiculous things just right in front of us. And, robot, dinosaur, paranormal things too. So I just like that tension, and I think we should use weird for good.
That's our tagline. Use weird for good.
I agree.
I like it.
How do you guys, this is for all of you authors out there too who are wanting to do this and doing this. How do you maintain your integrity, of your vision? And we're all with major publishers, so, in my own experience, we've had some push and pull, and I want to go a little too far, and they got to pull me back a little. Like, have you had, and how have you dealt with that struggle, just trying to get your vision through?
I think it's crucial to be lucky. I think I've been lucky, and I don't know how to advise you on how to be lucky in this way, but my editor is as weird as I am. Or he loves the things I do that are weird. In fact, it's the weird things that he loves the most, and he has never told me no, that's too weird on anything I've ever done. And I do keep pushing him, and I keep saying, okay, he's going to make me take this out. Oh, he'll make me take this out. But he never has. He just kind of glories in it, and I feel like I've been really fortunate. So
That's great.
there are people in the publishing world who are weird like you.
I never had a big fight. Things were pretty good and smooth. I will say there's one thing, Like, I think that everything is changeable and rewritable and revisable except for the core things. Like, if there's something that your book is really about this, the weird core, that's everything else can change but that. And for me, there was a line about I have to believe in impossible things. And for me, the whole book was that you have to have hope. You have to believe in these weird, impossible things. And that was the one thing that was not going to go to fight for. But whatever it is that's really important deep down. But
I think it really all depends on the editor, to tell you the truth.
Sure.
I've worked with editors who have just basically turned me loose and let me do whatever I wanted to do. Then I've had editors who were a little more, you might want to pull back on that. That's a lot of eye damage is very popular with certain editors. So don't take out that eye. You can't do that. That's rough. We don't want to do that rough. And there was a series, a children's series that I did, spun out of a much bigger series called Bone that I was doing for Scholastic, and there was a scene in the novels where one of the rat creatures was carrying around a dead squirrel, and throughout the stories, the squirrel is rotting, but he's still carrying it around, and one of the rat creatures names it, it's Frederick, and it's a very funny gag. But the editor's like, that's disgusting. That's got to come out. And I'm like, you don't get it. I said, that's really funny stuff. You have to leave that in. I won the argument, and at the same time, kids come up to me.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, that thing with the dead squirrel is a hoot. I think that is a riot. So, and I always send an email. Just got another letter from Jimmy. Loves the dead squirrel.
I love that. I love that. That's so good.
it's not disgusting, it's awesome.
It is awesome.
I will say that I've never actually been asked to pull back on the horror element, which is funny because I'm writing young adult in which I keep kind of inching more and more toward horror, but I have been asked to pull back a little bit on the romance, even though it's really not a lot. So sometimes, occasionally.
That's surprising.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe I just don't do it that well.
For me, it surprises me because the stuff that I think is really weird that the editors are going to be like, what are you doing? You know, like demons that eat zombies. I don't get that. But really, the things they want to take out on mine are like can we just take out that dance scene? I'm like, well, no. But, that's the stuff that they want to take out the tamer stuff, which is funny to me. And then the stuff that's like really like super, it just can't happen. They're like, yeah, that's great stuff. I go, okay. So they seem to like the weird stuff for me.
That's great. Well, I want to hear about some of your research. And I know this is a standard question, but I just want to know. I mean, the things of their books, I don't know how many of you guys have read their books, but they're incredible. But we've got dragon hybrids, that book is badass. We've got race car driving in space, Egyptian mythology, which is just lush and amazing. Oh my gosh, the Library of Alexandria, the great library, the ink lickers. She has ink lickers in her book, which is so creepy and awesome. And then your monsters over there with Raven's Child, that book is incredible. But I want to know if there's anything that sparked anything. It could be an image of because we know how those ideas come really strange and fragmented sometimes. Sometimes they come all at once. Sometimes it's just an image or a piece of music or something that sparked your vision of that. And also, let's start with that.
We're all paralyzed again.
Actually, I'll talk a little bit about research because before I did Seraphina and Shadow Scale, I used to draw a comic book. I wrote it also called Amy Unbounded, which was set in the same world, and it's a medieval fantasy world. And so for the comic, I actually did a lot of research on sort of the physical material culture of the Middle Ages so I could draw the things I needed to draw. And I used to work at a bookstore, Powell's in Chicago, which is different from Powell's Portland, so don't get excited. But it's very, very scholarly books they have, and a lot of medieval books would come in. I would buy these books, and my husband would be like, the reason you have a job is for money, right, not for books. And then I'd buy him books, and he wouldn't complain as much. But anyway, that's I got sidetracked. So I have a very large collection of medieval books, and I had learned a lot of medieval stuff before I started reading this book. And I feel like one of the things about weird, we're all up here glorying in our weirdness, but there is something a little bit to remember, which is that if everything is new and different, then it can become overwhelming for the reader, I think. There's a concept I've heard called the weirdness budget, which is a really useful concept. And what that means is you sort of set yourself an imaginary budget. And obviously for fantasy and science fiction, it's going to be higher than if you were writing realistic, set in high school, John Green stories. I would love to see those with some real weird stuff, but nobody, anyway, sorry, I keep getting distracted. So with this weirdness budget, right, so what it means is, when you're in Fantasyland, in principle, everything could be different. There is no reason people should live in castles or wear clothes or play familiar musical instruments or any of this stuff, right, because it's Fantasyland. But if you change absolutely everything, then there's too much for the reader to learn. And so you have to try and rein yourself in enough on some things that you can really be out there with other things. So for me, having the book grounded in the physical culture of the Middle Ages, that for me was my real thing, if that makes any sense, sort of a realistic ground to set down. And then from there, dragons could take human form, and then Seraphina can have a garden in her mind, and there could be all this other stuff happening. So that, for me, was the purpose of research, that you can kind of have things that are solid to then have a base for all your fireworks to be shot off from, if that makes sense. All right. So, anybody else? Okay.
For me, when I was researching this Egyptian series, the thing that was the focal point that made me start off all my research was actually the eye. Some of you might know about the eye of Horus, and I was thinking about what could the eye of Horus actually do, and I wanted to give it some kind of mystical, magical properties. And so, and that was actually my original title for the book. It ended up being Reawakened because one-word titles are the thing. But yeah, so for me, it was the eye. It was the eye, and I'm really glad that they actually put that on the front of the book because, the eye is the window of the soul, and I wanted to be able to see deeper into what these mummies could be. And then I started researching mummies, and I wanted my mummies to be the good guys. And so that was kind of how I started, was just this idea of an eye and what kind of a symbol it was and what you can do with the eye and eyes getting plucked out. I mean, all kinds of creepy things. So that was really what started me on this journey, was the eye.
In a way, since this is a graphic novel, my artist, Tom Brown, really had the hardest job. Okay. So because I'd say, yeah, this thing is really screwed up. I said, oh, I don't know what this thing's gonna do. It's got teeth, it's got eyes. And he would just say, how about this? He'd send me this really crazy drawing, and I'd say, that's freaking great. You nailed it, So there were some of the creatures were very specific because they had certain functions, but most of the time I just let him go. I mean, he had the hardest job with this book. I mean, yeah, I had to come up with the concepts and the dialogue and the backgrounds of all the characters, but he had to create the world that you were saying. I mean, I helped him as much as I could, but he really had to do it with pencil and the computer and stuff like that. So, and every once in a while I would say something like, this little guy here, make him look like my dog, because he's nasty. Make him, oh, I like that. So.
You mentioned earlier the ink liquor.
So
since my jumping off point for this book was that, of course, a lot of people don't really understand the basic history of the Great Library and how they built it up in the first place, because a lot of it was done through seizing books as they came into the city and basically putting them in the library for the public good. So I just carried that along so that if the library survived, it would become codified into law that the library owns the books and you don't. So I actually decided there would be a subculture of people who fetishize books, and so who actually eat them.
It's
Because
the best.
that
It's
happens.
the best. I love it.
I know, it's weird.
Makes sense
It's
to
really
me.
weird, but I mean, it's human nature. You know, something's forbidden. Eventually, somebody is going to build a trade around it and a fetish around it.
Yeah.
So,
It's the best.
That's awesome.
that's kind of how I did it.
Those
But-
people that fetishize the books, they're called librarians. Oh my gosh, I love it.
And Jenny, what do you do for a living?
Well, yeah, by day I'm a librarian.
Yeah, yeah.
Yay. I guess for me, I already mentioned I always wanted to be Han Solo, but you guys know in Aliens, in Prometheus, Peter Weyland-Yutani Corp. I kind of imagine my inspiration was, what if he is on this planet that's corporately controlled, like corporates puppet string the democracy and the government, Wall Street and K Street, But aside from that, I'm a very timid person actually in real life and would never race at hundreds of miles per hour and could never do those things. So I did do a lot of research. I live near Texas Motor Speedway. I interviewed amateur stock car racers. I read every book I could read. And also a weird inspiration is Red Bulletin magazine is huge fodder for novelists. They cover extreme sports, but they also have science, futuristic things, tech. Like every issue, I'm like, I could write a book about a robot parasailer. Like it's amazing. So a lot of research goes into it, and anything I got wrong is because I don't have the guts to get behind the wheel. So
That's so sad. You gotta fix that. You gotta fix that. Anyone else want to mention?
We all know.
All right, y'all did?
At the girl.
I wanted to open it up to you guys too, and I hope you guys have some good questions. You can ask anything really weird here. This is the one spot, please.
This is for Rachel. You mentioned the weirdness budget. Do you think that's more important in a YA novel than a novel more geared for adults?
Is the weirdness budget more important in a YA novel than in a novel geared for adults? I don't actually think so. But as an artist, you kind of have to use your good judgment, I guess, for what kind of book you want. It's possible. Well, now I'm sort of stuck. I always hate any kind of distinction where somebody says, oh, well, in YA there are these ceilings and there are these rules and we got to do this and that and that. And anytime anybody says that, I'm always like, no, rules, never. And so my anarchic, dander gets up, and then I do all kinds of really weird things. So, no, there are no rules, my friends. But, think about yourself and what you at that age would want to read, and I don't think, editors will also rein you in a bit, I think, too, if there's too much, I guess. But is it more important to think? I don't know. What do you guys think? I feel sort of stymied here. Like my immediate knee-jerk anarchic reaction is never.
You're so right, though. And
Yeah.
nobody does that with adult. Nobody says, well, in all adult books across the board,
Right.
millions and millions of different types of flavors and genres, they're all this. But there's a tendency to do that with YA. But the
Right.
spectrum is just as wide as the adult section, or not adult books, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
But I think there's actually,
I do.
I think there's actually a spectrum because at a certain point you've put so much in that your audience starts falling off the
Right.
wagon, because they just can't stay on board. They're like, I don't get it.
But
and
can kids stay on? I think kids can stay on
kids
board
stay on-
every bit as well as adults can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I don't think it's an age-related thing.
Yeah.
My mom will not read a book if it has anything at all remotely paranormal in it. I don't know how she. Well,
I
she
know, what
collects
is
my
that?
books, but she doesn't read them. But it's okay. But she told me once, I bought her a book, and she said, well, it was fine right up until that part where it got weird. And I was like, where did it get weird? And she said, well, that girl thought she saw a ghost. I said, but she only thought she saw a ghost.
Oh, gosh. Wow.
But, you know, I think a similar thing sometimes gets said with young adult books about like vocabulary level, that people say, oh, you don't want to use too hard words. That is utter rubbish, my darlings. Utter rubbish. My experience, both as a young reader and as a mother and as an adult reader, is that kids, in fact, don't mind the big words. They're used to not knowing every word there is. Whereas when you're a grown-up, right, you see a word you don't know, and it's sort of like a personal affront. Like, what, author? You think you're smarter than me? Like, and so, you know, so I don't think kids mind. And so you can put a lot of great words in there, and it's not gonna, you know, throw them out of the narrative the way it does for adults.
Well, and you know, the librarian in me, their studies show that like comic books and graphic novels have a higher incident of rare words and tough,
Really?
challenging words. Yes.
Cool.
And you know, I can't keep those on the shelf. And so I agree. I think that that's rubbish.
I think it's all how the information is presented. I mean, if you're hammering it over their heads, they'll get bored with it and they'll walk away from it. I know I'll walk away from a book if I
Yeah.
feel that it's just too much. If I'm having to learn. How dare they make me learn? I could be drinking.
That was a great question.
Anyone else? Please.
So I know all industries have trends where something gets successful and then there's a bunch of followers, but it seems like, especially in YA, you know, Twilight comes out, there are a bunch of vampire stories, Hunger Games gets big, and there's a bunch of post-apocalyptic, even though there are things that came before and after. Do you guys get influenced by that, or do your editors try and push you in a direction where they're like, you know, zombies are the new thing, or aliens are the new thing, and we need to write something with that in it because we want to get it out now, or do you just...
I find that once it's become a trend, the editors want nothing to do with it
Yeah.
anymore.
It's over.
And it becomes a trend before you see it.
Yeah.
It becomes a trend when they're acquiring it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So by the time you see it, you know, we're already
Way
past
past
it.
it.
Yeah. They don't want it anymore.
Have you ever been scooped by it? Have you ever been working on a book and then the trend?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Not actually, but usually like pitches.
Yeah.
Proposals and stuff, putting proposals and stuff together. Ah, damn it. Can I change it into something else?
But I think you can make yourself crazy. You can't do that. You have to write what you love and write from the heart
Right.
and write the thing that nobody else can do it quite that way. There's nothing new under the sun anyway. It's all execution. And I think I would be paralyzed if I thought
Right.
about
You're always
trends.
trying to keep ahead of it.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that honesty, it comes back to honesty, that if you were writing the thing that is really strongly in you to write, even if it's medieval fantasy, which everybody has seen a bazillion times before, and dragons, which everybody has seen 10 bazillion times before, you can still, you know, no one has ever seen the way you do it. And so you got to really dig deep and bring it out of yourself that way. So.
And I'd say if you wanted to write vampires and that's your thing, and then the editors are not acquiring vampires at the moment, just put it on the back burner
Yeah,
because
wait a
they'll
while.
be back around.
10 years.
Just give it some time, and you'll be able to write that series. So
Might be even 5.
Maybe.
And I've had editors say they don't want it, but it would still sell.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they just don't want to read it.
Oh, God.
So
Because they
the-
read.
I get
So,
that.
so if they bought the book, it would probably sell well, but they don't want anything to do with it. So,
The guy in the plaid shirt back there first.
I'm a writer. I just published my first thing last year. Every time I ask anybody the question, how did you make it? How did you get your first book published? I get the answer, you just got to keep working hard and you got to get an agent. My question is, for each of you, the steps you took, your story, how you got an agent and how you got published, if you don't mind. I know that's going to be a long
I'm going to be
story,
so
No,
much
we've
the
got time,
counterculture.
so it's good. Anybody?
yeah, you want me to do first?
Yeah,
I'll go
please.
first.
We'll just go in order.
Actually, I started in comics, so people got relatively familiar with my comic book work, and actually I made some really good friends in publishing. Christopher Golden is a really, really good friend of mine, and it was kind of like he wanted to learn to do comics, and I kind of wanted to learn to do books, and we just kind of traded information, and he introduced me to editors at publishing houses. And what's interesting is I didn't even really intend to start writing prose. It was almost accidental. I had done a book called Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the Monster Book, with Chris, myself, and Stephen Bissett. And the editor on that book over at Simon & Schuster said, hey, we just acquired the Angel license. You know, what would you do with an Angel book? And I'm like, I don't know. She goes, oh, write a couple of sentences for me. Go on, you little cute little thing. Go on. So I just threw 3 sentences on a piece of paper and handed it to her. She says, oh, I like this center one. What would you, give me a little more on that center one. I'm like, here's a little more on the center one. All right. And I went about my business, and I get a call from her. She goes, all right, the book's due July 5th. Oh. What do you mean it's due July 5th? So I was kind of tricked into writing. So that's not going to help people. It was kind of an accidental thing. And I didn't have an agent for quite a while. I did most of the stuff myself with Chris's help and stuff like that, looking over contracts and things. But after acquiring an agent, it got all far more official. But I didn't have an agent for years.
I actually self-published first. I self-published my first 2 books in my Tiger series, and then an agent came after me. So that was, I was just not patient enough to, and would I do that again? Hard to say. Knowing what I know now, I would say it's the hard path to go, but it was my path. So
I'm kind of also like, don't do this, but I actually went to a convention. Actually, my boyfriend bought me a ticket to a convention and dumped me at the door. And because he knew I liked to write, and he said, go talk to people about writing, and he drove away. So I had no choice. True story. And so I thought, I'll show him, and I went right in and I talked to an editor, thinking that they would automatically tell me to go away. And instead, he very kindly said, well, send me something. So I did, and I thought, that's the last I'll ever hear of this. And then he said, I like this, I want to buy it. And then the second time I sent it in to an editor, and I left my name and address off of it by accident. So she actually remembered where she'd met me and called general information to find my phone number to buy my book. So again, don't do that either. But actually, I mean, at that point, I got an agent and I started doing it sort of the right way. But yeah, I went into it trying to prove that, in fact, I couldn't do it. Maybe not the path.
Not the path.
I'm dumbfounded by how short these stories are. My story's like super long.
Regale us.
Yes,
Yeah,
well.
we've got time.
No, there are no worm cookies in this story. Sorry, guys. All right, everybody settle in. When I had a baby, I decided it was time to write. I had always wanted to write, and I assumed it was going to be super easy because the baby would sit over here being a baby, and I would sit over here being a writer, and we'd have this little peaceable kingdom, and it would be lovely. And it turns out, here's the punchline, babies are a lot of work. Nobody told me why, I don't know. But so it took me 4 years to get through the first draft of Seraphina. But once I had done that, I patted myself on the back and I thought, the hard part is over, yay. Now I'll just send it out and life will be golden. Well, there's a recurring theme in my life. You're going to pick up on this slowly. It turned out to be a bit harder than I thought. I sent it out to a bunch of agents, got their names off agentquery.com, which is a useful resource. You can look up agents and see who represents or is looking for the kind of stuff that you're writing, and it's very handy. Well, I sent it out, and a bunch of them sent back the generic, not right for my list kind of thing, good luck in your future life, which is not useful at all. But several people wrote me personal notes of rejection, saying, you're a good writer, and if you ever figure out what a plot is, do think of me again. And so you hear stories about writers who are persistent and send it out 100 million times and finally find someone who likes it. I decided I'd seen the writing on the wall and I was going to figure out what a plot was and rewrite it. So I rewrote it. And in particular, I had one particular agent in mind because he had not only sent me that note, well, he didn't send me that note. He had emailed me to ask if he could call me. which I thought was a good sign, right? There's no possible reason I could think of that anyone would call me except to offer me representation. Well, no, he called me to scold me because the ending was so terrible. I was like, oh my God, I cried.
Aww.
And when I was done crying, I decided he was passionate about this, right?
Yeah.
I had really disappointed him bad. But this was the kind of person I wanted in my corner. So I rewrote the book with a plot this time and sent it back to him, and he said, okay, you know what? I don't know if the rewrite was that great, but he liked my willingness to try, I guess. And I was a reasonably good writer, just not on the plot part. So he signed me, and I thought, yay, the hard part is over. So he sold it to Simon & Schuster, and that was actually fairly straightforward. I was like, yes, of course, it's all smooth sailing from here on. Except the editor at Simon & Schuster said, you know, this book sort of has a weird double arc. It would be better as 2 books. Great. You know, I could do that. You could divide the book in 2, rewrite the first half, rewrite the second half, each as its own book. Well, I did that. I rewrote the first half as its own book, sent it back to this editor, and she sat on it for 9 months.
Oh, wow.
And I was starting to get nervous, and I kept bugging my agent. This is why you have an agent, because he was like, you know, this buffer zone between your freak out and the editor. And he explained it's like being on the tarmac at an airport. It's not that the control tower has forgotten you, it's that there's other projects need to get off the ground first. Okay, that's fine. But the first thing I heard back after 9 months was that she was leaving Simon & Schuster, and my project was an orphan.
Yeah.
So this is another good reason to have an agent. He talked me off the ledge, and he said, don't worry, we will show it around other places. Everything's going to be okay. So he did, and we got some other offers on it, and I ended up at Random House instead. Whereupon, because I never, ever learn, I patted myself on the back and said, yes, it's everything's going to be smooth sailing from now on. Well, my agent at Random House, God love him, sat on their manuscript for 9 months.
Oh my God.
And I was like, no, I've seen this movie and I don't like the ending at all. Well, at the end of those 9 months, he said, listen, I'm so sorry this has taken so long. But I'm having a terrible dilemma, and I don't quite know how to tell you this, and I don't know how to advise you to make this novel better. So let's just talk this out. I love your characters. I love your world. I love your writing style. I love the themes. But the plot has got to go.
Oh, man.
I had already rewritten this book like 3 or 4 times, right? And I said, you know, I can't write this book again. Here's what I can do. I will write the second book. And so we went through outlines for it, and when it was sufficiently plotty, I sat down and wrote that book. And it worked out well. But by the time Seraphina came out, that was 9 years, right, since I had first sat down to write it. And then it came time to write the sequel, and I was that second book. I had written the second book first, so I didn't have a plan. So this took 3 years. So the moral of the story is I don't know what the moral of the story is. Don't pat yourself on the back too soon. But sometimes it takes a long time.
Yeah, it never ends. I heard your question and my heart kind of clenched, and it always does when I get this question. I think for me, I'm going to be honest, I'm really good at failing. I had written other books before I got my first agent. I had a second agent. I went on sub with other books before Tract. Tract went through editorial revisions for being sold. It was bumped. It was 3 years from sale to pub. Yeah. And I know that you don't like the persistence answer, but I think it's the core. I think being good at failure is what makes you good at being good with success. You got to be good at getting back up every time. And the answer is always write another book or sing another song or whatever groovy, weird thing that you do, no matter what. If your book doesn't get an agent, write another book. If it doesn't sell, write another book. If it tanks, write another book. Whatever it is, just get back up. Be that robot in Real Steel and just get back up every time. So
I have a corollary to that because I bumbled into getting published, but then I got fired by 3 publishing houses in a row because I wasn't selling. So, and the first time it happened, I called my agent in tears and I said, "What do I do? My career is over." And he said, "Change your name." I don't even think he stopped typing another email to someone else when he said this. He said, "Change your name and keep going." And I went, "Oh, I can do that?" And he said, "Absolutely, you can do it." And I have a long backlog of pseudonyms to prove it.
Yeah.
But the fact is, what she said, get back up and get back to work. That's all you can do. Is persistence does eventually do something, especially if you are learning and growing as you're persisting.
Yeah.
To be clear, I wasn't looking for an easy answer. I was just
Yeah.
looking for,
Yeah.
I just wanted specifics. So,
And
Yeah.
to steal from, Alex, Ailey Martinez, I love this. He has this thing called the tripod of success. He says that all you need is luck, talent, and persistence, and you only need 2 out of 3. If you have no talent, just keep going and you might get a little luck. Or if you're talented, just be persistent, or, whatever. It all works. So.
I think we got a couple more questions, please.
I was curious, since you're all YA novelists, what you guys were reading as teenagers. Were there any books that you really fell in love with when you were a kid, or when you or right out of high school, that you still go back to or that you still love today?
I didn't know that authors were still living when I was in high school. I thought that everything that had been written, and that every author was dead. I would have loved seeing an actual real life author coming to my school because I loved books and I loved reading, but I read like Scott Odell and I read all the classic stuff. I read Asimov. I read stuff that's considered classic today is what I grew up reading. So I didn't even know YA existed, actually, even into adulthood until Twilight came out. And then I was like, what is this book? I don't get, it's YA. Well, there needs to be more books like this. Why aren't there more books like this? Where are these books like this? And those are called YA, but I never heard of such a thing. I thought all books were just books, and they had sci-fi or they had fantasy. I didn't know there was a whole genre of this kind of book. And so that was what I read. But even now as an adult, that's all. YA is pretty much exclusively all I read now. So.
I did comics. I was a huge comic book fan, so that was, even now, that's kind of how I recharge my batteries. I'll go back to the old Jack Kirby Fantastic Fours and kind of recharge my batteries. But as far as books, I used to read, I was in like elementary school and I was reading Kenneth Robeson's Doc Savage books, which was just pure pulp insanity. And that was kind of like, yeah, I think I could do this. But that was many years after that. I did do that, but I didn't read anything that you'd expect a kid that age to be reading.
I was always going to the section, because in my high school, when I was in high school, Ages and Dark Ages and Dirtigo, I was, they had a section for boys. It was specifically labeled for boys.
Wow.
That's where all the good shit was. So I went to that shelf and I got the boys' Tales of King Arthur. I got the boys' Sherlock Holmes, the boys, Doc Savage. I got all of this stuff. And that's what I was reading that was kind of approaching YA. But then I also jumped immediately to Stephen King. So then I was too weird to go back after that.
Damaged.
I was. When you read The Shining at 12, there's really no going back.
I was such a microphone hog in the last question. I'm just going to say Terry Pratchett.
Yeah.
I read everything in the basement of our little town Carnegie Library. Zilpha Keatley Snyder, Encyclopedia Brown, Stephen King. I sat behind the couch at home and read the stuff that my mom read, romance novels or Lord of the Rings or comics or just everything.
That's great. Okay, one more question. It's going to be a good one.
What made you choose to write young adult novels more than other genres, specifically like for adults or like children?
I write young adult novels because that's the age I was when books were the most compelling and magical for me. And when a single book still had the power to change my whole life or outlook. I read so many books, by dead authors and people that I can never thank. And so in a way, I feel like my writing is my thanks, and a way to kind of we each kind of light each other's candles in turn, and maybe mine will inspire somebody else to write too, I hope.
I'm kind of the same. I write both adult and young adult, but there's a marked difference between when you go and you do an assigning for an adult book, and people are very measured, and even if they really loved it, that generally they're saying, I really love this. You go to a young adult signing and the kids cry, and they look at me and they say, this changed my life. And when you hear that, I mean, there's really no going back to, the passion you had for writing adult fiction. I still love doing it, and I do it, but this is where my heart is now. It was great.
For me, I would say I didn't start out writing YA. I started out wanting to write clean romance for women, basically, and teenage. Basically I wanted clean romance. So that's what and when I went to go sell it, they said, oh, this is YA. I said, oh, all right, well then I'm write YA. But now that I'm in it and I've read a lot of YA, the reason why it appeals to me so much is because I can write a contemporary YA, and then I can turn around and go write a fantasy YA, and then I can write something about vampires, and then I can go write something about, something else. And where if I was an adult writer, that you have a much harder time switching. I can't just jump into sci-fi and mix it up with fantasy, and then they go, wait a second, you're a science fiction author, so you need to be writing that. Or you're a romance author, you need to be writing romance, none of this dabble stuff unless you change your name. So I like that the YA genre is very, very open to basically experimentation with writing, that I can write different things I'm interested in.
I write both YA and adult also, but when I was first starting, I had written the first couple of chapters of an adult series that Penguin publishes now, the Remy Chandler series, which is about an angel. And an editor who read it happened to be a YA editor, and she says, I love this, but I can't buy it. It's an adult book. Why don't you do something like it in YA? And that's when I wrote The Fallen. So that spun out of all my research that I had done for the Remy books, spun out in there. So, yeah, one bit of research.
That's great.
I write YA because YA is for everyone. Are you human? Do you have opposable thumbs? Was your heart once young, or maybe still is? Then it's for you. That's why I write YA.